Hi, everyone. I really hope this finds each of you well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey. Absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to interview the compelling author, blogger, and companion to others in grief and healing named Casey Gauntt, who will be speaking to us today from Solana Beach, California, where he lives with his wife, Hillary. Casey earned degrees in business, law, and an MBA from the University of Southern California. And after 43 years practicing corporate and real estate law in San Diego, he is now retired. In 1970, Casey's father died by suicide when Casey was just 20 years old. And in 2008, Casey's 24-year-old son, Jimmy, Casey's 24-year-old son, Jimmy, who was a rising star and professional writer, was accidentally struck and killed by a car while he was walking home from a party. Casey and his deceased son, Jimmy, published their first book in 2015, titled Suffering is the Only Honest Work. Jimmy contributed much of what is in the book, including its title, and more than earned posthumous credit as the book's co-author. In his new book, titled When the Veil Comes Down, Casey shares a stunning revelation he had. Come on, Irene, speak. Casey shares a stunning revelation he has received, that there is coming a time when there will be no separation between us on this side of the veil and our loved ones on the other side, because when the veil comes down, that is where heaven will be. That time is closer than we might think, and the key to unlocking that door is to help others with their healing. This revelation illumines the mission of Grief and Rebirth podcast, which is to inspire healing and to present the many ways we each can heal. I have many questions for Casey about his remarkable book, When the Veil Comes Down, and much more. Hey, Casey, a warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you, Irene. So great to be here with you.
It's going to be a pleasure. We are going to have a lot of fun. And I loved your book. I just loved your book. I can't recommend it more highly to everyone listening. Let's begin with this question. Your father was a World War II hero and the strongest man you knew. Please tell us about your dad and your reaction to his suicide when you were just 20 years old.
Well, my dad, as you mentioned, was a highly decorated soldier in the Army. Served 2.5 years in the South Pacific during World War II. He achieved the rank of major when he was 24 years old. He was the youngest to achieve that rank in the Pacific Theater. He won a Legion of Merit, which is for meritorious service, 2 Bronze Stars. He became the battalion commander, was in charge of over 600 men, half of whom didn't come home. And so, my dad at a very early age, not only exhibited these very strong leadership qualities and ability to lead men, but he also saw way too much, as all those men did that were fighting in World War II and in particularly the South Pacific. And he came home with wounds we couldn't see. And he carried those with him like so many men did. But my dad was a voracious reader. He taught himself Spanish at the age of 40 because he went to work for my grandfather, Vernon Case, and his foundation company. And they were opening offices in Panama and Puerto Rico and Brazil. And my dad felt it would be helpful if he learned how to speak Spanish, so he's taught himself. He loved music. He loved to play in the stock market. He was intellectually curious. He was strict. He was a tough commandant in the home, and he traveled a lot. So he was, it seemed to me that he was gone more than he was home as I was growing up. during the last couple of years of his life, we all could see that he was declining a little bit. He was not himself, but he refused to get help, as a lot of the men did. That just,
In
we're
those
talking
days, it wasn't,
1970.
yeah, in
Yeah,
those days, it wasn't really accepted.
that's right. Yeah. And so I came home for Christmas. We were living in the Chicago area. I came home for Christmas, 1970. I thought my dad was in Panama on a business trip. And then we got the word the next morning that he shot himself in his office that night, the night I got home. And it was devastating. My sister was 13 at the time. I have an older brother, 2.5 years older, and a very strong mother. My mother was a lioness, but it was just so shocking and unfathomable that this strong man would do something like that. That was the decision that was the only one left to be made. And so, in addition to the shock, I became very angry. I was very upset with the fact that he, did this to me, did this to my family. And so the way I dealt with it is I buried his memory. I did everything I could to forget about him. I wanted nothing to do with him. And it was that way for 38 years.
Wow. And we're going to talk about what broke that logjam a little later in this interview. I'm so sorry. That must have been so traumatic for you. And then you lost your son, Jimmy. Could you tell us? He was wonderful. He was gifted like you are, like your dad was. And would you like to tell us about him and share what your relationship with him was like before he transitioned?
I'd love to. Jimmy, it's funny. From almost the moment he was born, I never thought of him as being a baby or young. He always seemed older to me. And that kind of told me, I later on figured out he was just an old soul. He'd done a lot of laps here before. But he was a kind kid. He was a driven kid. This kid taught himself to read when he was 5 years old because he wanted to be able to read the box scores in the baseball section of the newspaper, and also read the baseball cards that he was collecting. He was lights out smart. He was by far the smartest kid in every class he was in. He too learned Spanish because he went to a bilingual class in Solana Beach. And by the 6th grade, he was fluent in Spanish and gave the commencement speech for the 6th grade class, half in English, half in Spanish.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
he was awesome. Holy moly.
And, by the time he was in high school, and he was a superstar athlete, he was on the football team, star wide receiver. He was an elite high jump specialist in track. But he's now gravitating. He was a voracious reader as well. And he was reading books that nobody else was reading. And he was the dream student in high school for his teachers just because of his intellectual capabilities and curiosities, which he carried forward into college. And he also went to USC, was a trustee scholar, which is a very prestigious, full paid ride to USC. And he majored in Spanish and English, spent a summer in Madrid after his freshman year. Wow. Learning and studying Spanish literature. Then he had spent his senior year in college in London, attending Queen's College University, where he studied English literature and theater. And by this time, he had already written 3 plays. two
Wow.
of which had been produced by the USC Theater Department.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And we were close. We were just very, very close. And I share in the book, in the chapter, if you write it, they will come. The birthday, or pardon me, the Father's Day card he wrote to me in 2006. He wrote it when he was still in London. And basically he thanked me for giving him permission to do whatever he wanted to do. He didn't have to be like me. He didn't have to go to law school. He could pursue his passion. Whatever your passion is, I encouraged him to do that. And he found writing, then acting, playwriting, screenplay writing, and he was very grateful for that. And I was humbled that he also felt the same way, that that I wanted him to be successful at what he wanted to do, not me, not what I did.
Right. You were a good dad, and he was an amazing son. How did that accident happen?
Just a freak accident, Irene. He had just come home from Los Angeles, where he was living and working. He was, just starting out on his career. He had just finished ghostwriting a screenplay for a major Hollywood director, and was still finishing his own screenplay that he wanted to have made into a movie. But he came home because he was going to be going out the next week to Vietnam on his kayaking trip with a bunch of friends.
Wow.
So anyway, he came home that night. I'll never forget it. It was opening day of the 2008 Olympics. And we're kind of watching it on TV, and he's making fun of like the teams from some of these obscure countries, and they're walking, they got two people, and we're just having this great banner. And then he gets up, he gets a call, it's like around 9:30 at night, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to go meet up with some friends that are in town, and I may not make it home tonight because we're going to go, hit some bars, have some beers, and if not, I'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll take a hike." I go, "Great." We kissed goodbye. Before he left,
I love that you were kissing your 24-year-old son goodbye.
we always kissed.
Yeah.
Always kissed. My dad and I kissed too. That was that. I learned that from him. Yeah. So, but our daughter Brittany was with us watching the Olympics. Her husband of 1 year was fishing in Alaska with his father and two brothers. So Jimmy leaves, but then he pops up and looks at Brittany and says, "I'm so glad you married Ryan." And then he pops down. Those were the last words we heard from him.
Wow.
So later that night, he, after many beers, he went home with a buddy of his and was going to spend the night. And for some reason, he got up like around 4:30 in the morning and decided he was going to try and walk home. It would be a 5-mile walk. And later we found out this was something Jimmy did kind of on a routine basis. If he, was out drinking, he would like to get up early and walk, maybe walk it off or just get fresher or what have you. But he picked the wrong road to do that. It was a very windy road east from where we live, no sidewalks, no shoulders. And a young man who was, I think, also 24, 23, was driving to work to a golf course. He had the early shift. It's like 5:30 in the morning. And his car comes around a curve, and Jimmy is right on, the edge of the shoulder and the road, and hits him. And that was it.
That was it.
No accident. It was just a pure accident. Nobody's fault, in the wrong place at the wrong time for both Jimmy and this poor driver that struck him.
And I want to say that in your book, there's a wonderful, you talk about your journey with this young driver and what happened. And I think people would really want to read about that, because there was so much grace that you came to, and compassion, and helping to heal this young driver. It was a wonderful, wonderful story. So 3 months after the accident, the repressed grief over your father's suicide, in addition to your intense grief over Jimmy, took you to a very dark place. But then you were connected with both your father and your son in a truly miraculous way that led to your spiritual awakening. Please share both your miracle and your spiritual awakening with us, Casey.
The death of Jimmy really brought forth the death of my dad, because I never dealt with his death, as I mentioned. And I started seeing a psychologist. I referred to him as Dr. A, 6 weeks after Jimmy died. I needed help. I mean, I was in a bad place.
I can totally relate.
And he actually, he was wonderful. I'd see him like every Tuesday. It was like Tuesday, not Tuesday with Maury, but I had my Tuesday with Dr. A. He said to me, he said, first session, he said, we're not even going to begin to start with Jimmy until we deal with your dad. And so that's what we did. That's who we worked on first. But anyway, it was November 3rd, 2008, 3 months after Jimmy died. I'm in my law office. I get a call, or actually my secretary brings in a message. She said, you just got a call from a woman named Emily Sue Buckberry. She says that you were together many, many years ago in Colwood, West Virginia, and you left something there, and she wants to return it to you. And my secretary, she says, what, did you have a baby there? I go, no, I swear, I know I did. I know that didn't happen. And I thought, I remember Colwood, but I don't remember this Emily Sue at all. Long story short, I spent the summer after I graduated from high school in Colwood, West Virginia. If you've read the book by Homer Hickam, Rocket Boys, or ever saw the movie October Sky, which was a film made in 1998, that's where it takes place, in Colwood. And I was there. My dad's and grandfather's construction company was installing a ventilation shaft for a new section of the coal mines there. And so basically my job was digging a hole, digging a very big hole. But it was an amazing summer. And I met Emily Sue there. But anyway, I call her back. Initially I'm thinking, do I really want, do I want to open this door? I don't know. I don't remember her. What is she doing reaching out to me at this point in time? Anyway, I call her back. And she basically says, you may not remember me. And I said, yeah, I barely do. But when you left to go home, I heard you were leaving. And so I stopped by your room because I wanted to say goodbye. We all stayed in this clubhouse hotel owned by the coal company. And she said, I could see you were gone, but I looked at a wastebasket outside your room, and there was a letter outside of an envelope. So I reached down and picked it up, and I saw it was a letter from your father. Mm-hmm. And I read a few lines and I go, wow, this is a beautiful letter. Why did Casey throw this away? And it was marked personal and confidential on the envelope. So she said, I think I better keep this and try and get it back to Casey. Well, 38 years or 40 years later,
you forgot all about it, obviously.
She kept it, and it was in boxes, and then she comes across it as she's moving from one place to another. And so she goes, well, now we have Google's, I can find Casey.
Had you seen it? Had you seen the letter, Casey, or how did it find its way into the room?
I never got the letter.
Wow.
Because when I read it, so we have a conversation. She tells me that, she kept this letter. She didn't ask me about my dad on that call. And then she asked me the question, of course, hey, do you have kids? And she was a very gregarious woman, just like you, Irene. She's just, ebullient. And I and I told her, yeah, we have a daughter, and our son died. And I told her, I'm sorry to tell you this, our son died 3 months ago. And she just got, oh my God, kind of stone cold silent, like, what am I getting into here? Why am I reaching out to him now? So she sends me the letter. She said, I'm going to put it in special UPS delivery right now. You should have it tomorrow. I talked to her on a Monday. The letter doesn't come the next day, doesn't come the next day. Anyway, that Saturday, my daughter, her husband, Ryan, my mother, and I went down to the beach because we were going to spread some of Jimmy's ashes in the ocean. And a beautiful day, just a gorgeous day. And my mother got tired, so I drove her home, and then I swung by her house, looked in the mailbox, and there's the letter in the envelope that Emily Sue has sent to me. I opened it up and I began to read the letter, and I realized I never saw this letter before. I mean, I would have remembered this letter because it's a full 2-page, handwritten on both sides in my dad's very neat handwriting. And he wrote it in June of 1968, 2 weeks after I arrived in Colwood. But later that summer, I was told, do you know that during those first couple of weeks you were there, people were going into your room and searching because they couldn't figure out what's the boss's kid doing in Colwood? Are they here to spy on us? Or, what's this silver spoon in his mouth kid from Chicago doing in Colwood, West Virginia? And I think that was a legitimate question to ask. But anyway, I think somebody sidelined that letter. It never got into my hands. And then they didn't know what to do with it. Anyway, so I'm reading the letter, and my dad is telling me all about his early life. He talks about a depression in his youth. He lost a younger sister to diphtheria when he was 14. She was 9. His parents were Christian Scientists, so they didn't take her to the hospital where she could have gotten the vaccine and the medicine to save her life. He never forgave his parents. He talked about his time in the war. He talked about his insecurity. He wasn't sure if he would be thought of as successful. I mean, he's talking to me in this letter like he's talking to me now, man to man. And then he starts just writing how, these beautiful words about his love for me and, his hopes for me, and that I have all the tools to become successful. And he closes the letter with this. He said, I'll be around. Anytime you want me, I'll be there.
Wow.
Because I care. I get this way every time I think of it. More than you'll ever know, my son. All love, Dad. And what I didn't mention is that day, that Saturday, November 8, 2008, was our son's 25th birthday.
My gosh. Wow.
The letter arrived on his birthday because my dad, 40 years earlier, knew that day was going to be the hardest day of my life. And he was there with me, as he promised he would.
That is incredible. That is incredible. That is incredible. The woman who found it and found that woman who found it and sent it to you after you told her about it, she must have been knocked out.
He freaked out.
I mean, she played such a role in this spiritual awakening. It was an awakening for her too.
Total. And so when she found out about my dad and Jimmy, and it arrived on Jimmy's birthday, she went like stone silent. I couldn't reach her. And you know who she reached out to for guidance? Homer Hickam, the author of Colwood's Famous Boy. And he told her, he said, Emily Sue, you get in there. you're part of this and you got to ride this with Casey. So you just get in there and suck it up and it's going to be okay.
Wow. And it helped her. I'm sure it helped her with healing and helped people around her also.
Yeah.
So this amazing story, this letter was made into an award-winning film. That's mind-blowing, fabulous. How did this experience begin your second and most rewarding career as a writer and companion to others in grief? And please tell us about the film. That's incredible.
I will. I'd love to. So in October of 2009, we went, my wife and I, Hillary and I went to Colwood, West Virginia. The town, they have what they call October Sky Festival, and it's a celebration of the town's fame because of Homer Hickam. And so we met Emily Sue, had some lovely conversations with her. And I was able to thank her in person for what she had done. We met Homer Hickam and talked to him for a long time. And I was introduced to this guy named Steve Date, who's from Minneapolis. And he was also in Colwood because he had just finished making a film, a documentary called Welcome to Colwood, that he had been working on the last 3-4 years. So this person said, you've got to meet Steve because he's going to want to hear your story. So we meet and I begin to tell him the story and he goes, do you mind if I film this? And so he basically filmed me telling this story. And then 6 months later, he came to visit us in San Diego because he wanted to get some additional shots of me reading from the letter and some other things. And so we bonded quite closely with him, and his film, The Letter, was just beautiful, and 10 minutes, and he entered it in several film contests in the Midwest and East Coast, and it won several prizes. It won the best film in West Virginia of its genre. And I was as happy for Steve as I was for ourselves. Just, he created this beautiful thing for us. And Steve and I remain very close. He's made other films for us.
What a validation. What a validation.
Yeah. And then, but when the letter happened, when that story unveiled, that experience, I wrote that story down and I shared it with family and friends. And because I knew, Irene, I knew when this happened and this letter arrived on the day that it did, this was not just for me and my family. This was something that needed to be shared. This was for everybody. I really felt that. Right. And so that began my venture, if you will, into writing. Jimmy was the writer. Clearly, I wrote complex contracts, but Jimmy put his pen in my hand and was directing me without question. I felt that. And so then a lot of other things began to happen. We go to Belgium and Paris, our first trip away, and Hillary and my sister see Jimmy cross the street across from a restaurant that we were having lunch at in Paris, and then Hillary has another experience on a barge, and then these incredible synchronicities begin to unfold that Jimmy is behind completely, and he's touching friends of his. These aren't just coming to us; they're hitting his friends, and so I just start writing these down. I figured, okay, I'll be your scribe. So that's what I did.
Fabulous. Now your first experience was with a medium who connected you with your dad. And there were profound messages your dad transmitted to you. Would you like to tell us about that, Casey?
Yeah, I really would like to tell you about it. So we saw a medium a month after the letter arrived from my dad. Now, that was a different medium. That was Tara from Sedona. And we had, and Hillary and I went to that reading, and we had several subsequent readings with her. But the reading that I write about, I write a little bit about our first reading with Tara in the book. And then I write about the reading I had with a wonderful lady and medium, Chris Lynn, in Colorado in February of 2020. And this was, interestingly, this was the first reading I had ever done without Brittany and Hillary. I did this one myself, and it was a birthday gift from my daughter. So that's what we do. We give each other readings.
You're right up my alley. I'm the same way.
I mean, that's the best gift you can get. I mean, come on.
I often give people a healing session or whatever. I feel it's like the best thing I can do.
Yeah, priceless. So during that reading, Jimmy came through first. He always does. And he actually, in his own way, said, you know, Dad, you've got to really get involved more with helping parents heal. And you need to be speaking to them and to their group. You need, you know, you've been sharing stories with them on their website, but you need to actually get a microphone in your hand. And then my dad came through, and it was the first time my father had ever come through in a reading. And I suspect he's always been deferential to Jimmy. But my dad came through, and he said, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to you because you helped me heal. You helped me heal here. You gave me my heart back. And now I am able to help others. I mean, I was blown away. The medium was blown away. She's saying, wait, I thought, wait, we can help them? I thought they had all the help they needed over there. And this is something that I felt, I'd already felt internally, that I was helping my dad by, you know, writing the story and writing about him. I wrote a very long story about him, and it's on our website. Included him in our first book, and I was sharing him. I was bragging about him. I was, my family and I, my brother and sister and mother, were finally beginning to talk together about him. We got him out of the darkness, you know, where we had locked him up for so long. And my extended family were talking about him. And for my dad to acknowledge that and say, you helped me heal, that was an epiphany for me. And that's the reason I wrote the second book.
Well, you know, before I ask you your next question, I have to, there's so much about your story and my story that's like a ditto, you know, because I had a similar experience. I had an abusive father, a troubled childhood. And after my husband died, I never wanted to. I spoke to mediums and all. I never really desired to speak to my father. I cannot tell you how many times my father has come through unbidden, asking me to not stop what I'm doing, because as I help others to heal and as I heal myself, he is healing on the other side. And I am helping him. It is just so, we are so in sync. Yeah. With this, and I'm just, you're validating my truth and I'm validating yours. So it's just amazing. And then after Jimmy died, you, your wife Hillary, and your daughter Brittany, I love that you called yourselves Team Healing. So tell us about the many forms, which is what I am trying to encourage people with this podcast to get healing. Tell us about the many forms of healing the three of you utilized, and when did you know, Casey, that you'd healed enough to be able to begin to help others?
Yeah, team healing.
I love that.
As I mentioned, I think one of the things I'll never forget is the day after Jimmy died. Hillary Brittany and I took a walk in, it's a lagoon very near our house, beautiful hiking trails. And it was on that walk that Hillary stopped, and we're looking out over the lagoon and the Pacific Ocean. And she said, "We are not going to let this take us down, because that would make Jimmy so unhappy, and we will not make Jimmy unhappy." She laid the law down. She said, we made a choice right there that we weren't going to tank, and we were going to do it for Jimmy. So as I mentioned, a month after the letter arrived, we had our first reading together with Tara. It was fabulous, just a phenomenal reading. And Jimmy was just all over it and just blowing our minds with the messages and all the signs that he had been giving us. And then a few months later, or actually it was a month later, we had a healing session with a shaman, Jade Wahoo.
Now, what was that like? What was that about? Because I've interviewed quite a few shamans on the podcast. And what did that shaman specifically do for you?
So we had what they call a soul retrieval ceremony. Because in our first reading with Tara, she looked at Hillary and she said, when Jimmy died, a part of you split and went with Jimmy. And she looked at Brittany and me and she said, the same thing probably happened to you two as well, but it's really strong with Mom here. And Jimmy would like to come visit her. And he does come visit her in her dreams. But Hillary wants to be with him so much that he can't get that close to Hillary because, he wants her to stay with you guys. Scared the hell out of us. So Tara said, you need to go meet with Jade and have him do a soul retrieval ceremony. And to try and get some of your pieces back. So we did that on my 59th birthday. That was like my birthday present.
That is one cool birthday present.
I had a very, very powerful reaction during that ceremony. Hillary and Brittany less so, but I felt like something really heavy came out of me, and I just dissolved into tears. And we all heard the scurrying around in the room while we had our eyes closed and Jade's pounding the drum and we're going into the different realms. And we asked Jade when we, kind of towards the end of the ceremony, I said, do you have a dog? He goes, no. So what was that scurrying we heard? It was like somebody was shuffling around. He goes, oh, that was Jimmy. He wouldn't miss this. So then we did other readings together. We did a very powerful workshop in November of 2009 in Sedona with Tara and other people that had suffered loss of a loved one. And it was during that session, Brittany now she's 3 months pregnant. And Tara, I wrote a lot about this in the first book, by the way, and we called it Doing the Work. But it was during that workshop that Tara was able to, through a play acting session, get Brittany to admit that she was carrying this weight where she felt now it was her responsibility to make Hillary and me happy. And so that was her job. And we're all in tears, we're hugging and we're saying, no, it's not. That's not your job. Making us happy is not your job. We all have to get to where we need to be. You've got to do what you need to do to get yourself in a good place. That was an epiphany for us. And then we did other workshops and readings, and we just talked a lot. We shared everything. If somebody would have a dream, we'd share it. If somebody, had an experience, a sign, a message, we'd share it. So, and it was just that, that constant interaction and check-in of how are you doing? How are you doing? Because we're, as you know, Irene, nobody grieves the same. Nobody's on the same page. You all are going at a different pace and a different, a different road. But to answer your question, when did I feel like I turned a corner? So I was, as I said, I was writing a lot of stories, sharing these things with others, but I was still kind of hiding behind my pen. And by this time, we had started the website, Write Me Something Beautiful, in 2011. But it was 2013, 5 years later, after Jimmy's death, and I was at the gym, and a buddy of mine that I work out with, he asked me, he said, Casey, a good friend of mine just lost their son to an accidental drug overdose. When did you feel that you really started to heal? And I told him, I said, the answer just popped right in my head. I said, it was at the point where I felt I could begin to help others, and I could sit down one-on-one with others and actually, be a companion to them, and not only listen to them, but also share some of the things that we've learned and experienced. And that was 5 years. It was a 5-year slog for me to get to that point.
Get to that point. Now, you make a differentiation in the book between mending grief and healing grief. What do you see as the difference there?
Well, there's a chapter called Heal. What does that even mean? And what does that even mean was a quote from a friend of mine, a dad, whose daughter, she was a twin with her brother, but she died of a tragic disease when she was 10 years old. And subsequently, during one of our conversations, the word heal came up. And that's when he said, what does that even mean? Because I think for a lot of people, heal, when they hear the word heal, it means to be made whole, to be restored to the way you were before. And instinctively, I know, and others know, who have lost someone they deeply love, that's not going to happen. You are never going to be the person you were before.
That's true.
So, right?
Yes.
You've changed.
Absolutely.
You've changed. And so that definition, I think, turns a lot of people off. But there's another definition that says heal also means to mend, to overcome an obstacle, to move forward, to learn how to. So I like that term. I like, mending as far as healing goes, because I think that is what, we go through. We've changed. People around us have changed because they don't know how to interact with us, or many don't, right? Yeah. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And we write a lot about that in the book. And try to offer some helpful guidance as far as how to be a better friend, a better colleague. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to bring it up. They want to hear it. It's okay. But we learn how to wear our loss. We learn how to carry it. And sometimes I write in that chapter, I said, a lot of times I'm wearing a mask. I'm not walking around saying, oh, whoa, look at me, poor Casey, lost his dad to suicide, and Jimmy's, dead. And no, I'm laughing, I'm, sharing stories, but I've also learned how to take off my mask, and I'm comfortable doing that with people I just meet, because I feel one thing that I've learned from this that I think is so important is I've learned when I take off my mask, and it could be with, like, this happened just a couple months ago with the dental hygienist who I just met for the first time. And she's babbling on. She's, trying to make friendly conversation, like, you all do when, you meet somebody. And, so do you have kids? And I could have, said, yeah, we have a daughter and, 2 grandsons. But I said, I'm taking my mask off. We have a son. We have a son. And he was killed in a car accident. She immediately launches into her story about her sister who, almost died of cancer. And then she did die. And then she's coming through in dreams and giving her advice on how to raise her high school daughter. And so what I learned is when we share our truth, our bad thing, we open the door and give others permission to share theirs. And without exception, people jump through. And that's how you deeply connect, right?
Right.
That's how you deeply connect with somebody.
You people to heal, you validate their, validate their reality, and then you can sometimes give them help and direction if they take it.
Yeah.
Now, you've got some really great stories in your book about proof of survival to the other side. Could you tell us about the gifts Conrad Leslie received from his 20-year-old son who died in France? And briefly tell us the story about your friend Chris, his dad, and Chris's deceased 10-year-old son. I love those stories.
Conrad and Paola Leslie, who are now dear friends of ours, that's another story in and of itself, how we connected. They lived nearby in Del Mar, and we were connected with them about 8 months after their son and their only child, Nicholas, was killed in the terrorist attack in Nice. Wow. On Bastille Day in 2016 that claimed the lives of 84 people.
I remember that.
Yeah. They were, to say, they were beyond devastated. Nicholas was their life. They had built their life around him. And he was also a phenomenal young man, super smart, tremendous athlete, kite surfer, scuba diver, adventurer. I mean, he was, just everything. Fortunately for the Leslies, shortly after Nicholas died, they began to receive messages. One of them was they were in their house in Del Mar. They've subsequently moved to Hawaii, but they were in their house in Del Mar. And a friend of theirs, who was also an intuitive healer, was talking to them and really trying to help Paola. And Paola is asking this woman, where is Nick? Where is my son? And this woman's saying, he's in the light. Nick is in the light. And Paola says, well, what does that mean? Like there's, a flashlight shining on him. And what does that mean? At the same time this is going on, Conrad is looking at this huge blow up photo of Nick, of him coming out of the water after a kite surfing session in Del Mar. And Conrad took the photo, but he's looking at it and he's saying, doggone it. It's a photo that they blew up and used for one of Nicholas's memorial gatherings. And so Conrad's saying, I wish I had done a better job with that photo because, the light is kind of dark over Nick. The sun was behind him, and you really can't see his features. And at the same time this is going on, Paola's yelling at this intuitive, like, what do you mean he's in the light? At that moment, it was a foggy day in Del Mar, as it often is. We get this June gloom, and the sky breaks open, a beam of light comes through their skylight, hits this photograph, and Nicholas's face is just lit up. And they both start crying, and they get it. Nicholas is in the light. He is showing us he's in the light. He's in a good place.
Right.
That was their first of many signs.
Wow.
Now, let me briefly tell you the story of Chris. Chris was a colleague of mine at a company I work for in San Diego. He did too. His 10-year-old son in 2000, I think it was 2011, passed away from a very rare blood disease. And he was, as I said, he was 10 years old, and his name was Christian. In 2016, so we're now 4 or 5 years later, Chris's father suffered a massive stroke and was placed in the intensive care unit at in a hospital in San Diego. And he's on a ventilator, he's on life support, and he is he's conscious, his mind is functioning, but the only thing he can do is blink his eyes. And so the doctors worked out a way to communicate with him. So if they'd asked him a question and he blinked once, that was no. If he held his eyes closed for 5 seconds, that was a yes. So the day comes, and his father, they ask him, do you want to stay on the machines? No. So they make an appointment for the next day to remove him off the machines, and he will pass over. So the family shows up at the hospital the next day for this, and one of the nurses is giving Chris's dad a bath, a sponge bath. And Chris said, hey, we're all here and we're ready to proceed with, whatever they're going to do. And the nurse looks at him and she goes, well, is Christian going to join us? And Chris goes, what do you mean, Christian? I'm Chris. So, and, I'm here. No, she goes, no, there was a young man that was here earlier this morning before you all arrived. And I saw him standing by the door to your dad's room. And I looked up and asked him, I said, can I help you? And he goes, yeah, my name is Christian. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few words to my grandfather. And she goes, sure. So he comes in, she watches him Christian kiss his grandfather and start whispering in his ear, and she leaves the room. So now Chris is talking to the nurse saying, who is this Christian? And she describes him as a young man around 15 years old. And she said, oh, I must be mistaken. She's getting kind of flustered when Chris tells her Christian died 5 years earlier. And she's like freaking out. And so she goes, well, I must have made a mistake, that, blah, blah, blah. And she says, well, we do have these cameras that capture anybody who comes in and out of the ICU unit, not in specific rooms, but the unit. So they went and took a look at the camera feed. And the only people they saw go in and out of the ICU during the relevant period were doctors, nurses, and the other family members. There was no Christian. So right before they're going to take the dad off life support, Chris, my friend, bends over and whispers in his dad's ear. He asked him, he said, Dad, did Christian come visit you this morning? His dad goes,
Wow.
tears strolling down his cheeks. And here's the guy,
You can't make this
Chris.
up.
You can't make
cannot
this up.
this up.
You can't make this. You've got a nurse that witnessed this. You've got, the grandfather, Christian was there to help his grandfather over. And this was really one of the first signs, big sign it was, and message that my friend Chris got from his son.
That's outstanding.
And then the floodgates opened.
That is
Now he was open to it.
Oh my God, that is outstanding.
Yeah.
So on that note, and I love how authentic you are, Casey, and and I can so relate. Please define what you call a near life experience, a partial death experience, and what's the meaning of the phrase eternal love?
So as a lot of these things were happening, and the letter from my dad, and these synchronicities and messages and things that not only we were getting, but other parents are getting, like the Leslies and my friend Chris and others. I began to think about near-death experiences, and those are well documented, and people speak to those. I know you've had Dr. Eben Alexander on your podcast, and he and Dr. Mary Neal, and they've had some phenomenal near-death experiences where you go over, you've actually kind of gone into some death state, and you actually get a peek over into the other side, and where our loved ones are hanging out, and you may even get a chance to talk to them. But it occurred to me, well, it should work both ways, right? I mean, if we can go be with them on the other side, then they certainly can come through and be with us. And so I don't know if it's my own term, but I call those near life experiences, because our loved ones, our kids, Saul, your husband, they're near us here in life, right? What we call life, because we're in body, yes. Right? But they're with us, and they demonstrate and show us this in so many different ways. So that was, again, it was, as I got thinking deeper about this and looking broader about, what's happening here, what is all this, and then I hearken back to what Tara told Hillary and us during that first reading, that a part of you split and went with Jimmy. And I very, very much felt that when I first got the news that Jimmy was killed. I felt a part of me was ripped out and was no longer part of me. And I felt at the time that was a bad thing. That, as we were talking, I will never be who I was before. I will never heal, because, a part of me is gone.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
But what I didn't appreciate then, but what I then learned over the years, is that, yeah, a part of me is with Jimmy. A part of me is with my dad. And that is the bridge that keeps us connected. There's in the book, there's a chapter called Priests, Mediums, and Quantum Theory. There's other chapters in the book that involve rabbis, but
just to make sure you're an equal opportunity.
Exactly, and Buddhists, and we have Buddhists too. So but one of the priests actually talked to me about quantum theory and the theory of entanglement, which says that if two objects are initially connected and bonded, but then split, no matter what the distance, between those two objects that were previously entangled, if you affect one of them, the other one is immediately affected and impacted at the same time. And so what I was able to kind of put together in my head is that we are forever entangled with our loved ones. Why wouldn't we be? We've shared the same DNA. We share these memories. We share this love. And part of us did go with them, and are with them and are seeing things that they're seeing, and they're doing the same for us here. We are entangled, and we are forever joined with them. We are forever in love. That is eternal love.
That's eternal love, and that
That's
love
eternal
never
love.
dies.
Yeah.
It never dies. Tell
No.
me about your website, because I think a few people listening to this podcast will want to write you something beautiful. So tell us about that.
Yeah. The title of the website really came and was inspired from the last conversation Jimmy had with one of his very good friends, Eric. They were at a Mexican restaurant here in Solana Beach, and this is probably a month before Jimmy died. And Eric was a budding writer, but was struggling with, how to approach what he wanted to do. And Eric, of course, tells this story not only to us, but he told it at Jimmy's memorial service, where there were 1,000 people. Jimmy told Eric, look, write me something beautiful and send it to me, and we'll go from there. And Eric bemoaned the fact that he didn't send Jimmy something before he died, but what he wrote and said at Jimmy's memorial service, phenomenal. He wrote something really beautiful. So that's where the name for the site comes from, writemesomethingbeautiful.com. And we started it in 2011, because by that time, and until that time, I was just writing and sharing with family and friends all of these things and stories that were coming our way. And it was just getting out of control. I mean, I couldn't keep track of what I was sending. And so I figured, all right, it's time to start a website. And that would be the platform for sharing stories, not only our own, but stories from others. And it would be a nice way to, have people be able to look at it, interact with it, and send things to us. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Then you've done another wonderful thing for people. You've brought together a group of fathers in San Diego. You called them the fraternity. Would you like to tell us about that? And is that just limited to San Diego?
Well, our group is, but the day after Jimmy died, a colleague of mine, he was another attorney in San Diego, and we knew each other. I wouldn't say we were close friends, but his son had been tragically killed. He was a passenger in a car wreck in 2001. Richard calls me and says, I'm so sorry for your loss. You have no idea how hard it's going to be, but I do. And you've just joined the worst fraternity there is. But I'm going to be checking in on you every 2 or 3 months and see how you're doing. And he did. And then, and Richard, as I write in the book, is his name. His way of helping people is when he reads about a father who has suffered the loss of a child in San Diego, he cold calls them.
Wow.
And says, I've suffered the same loss. How can I help you? And he did that with another dad um, who his daughter was killed in a horrible car crash on August 9, 2010, 2 years to the day after Jimmy died. And I thought, I should reach out to this guy, but I didn't. I wasn't there yet, Irene. I wasn't there. But Richard called them and they got together for coffee. And then I write in the book how then Richard and this other dad named Greg, how we finally connected in 2013. So the three of us dads, we were the original founders of the fraternity that, God forbid, anybody ever has to join. Yeah. And so then, we brought in, other dads that we knew, and we're up to about 25 and meet every couple months. Unfortunately, with COVID, that our meetings have been stunted, but we stay in touch, and we'll get that going again.
Well, it's good for people to know when they get your contact information if they want to be a part of that. Yes. And you, of all people in the universe, Casey, what is your message about the importance of healing? Why should they heal now or soon, to share with our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience?
I think Ram Dass, speaking of Buddhists, said it best, that we're here on this life to learn, and we are going to make several trips back through this life when we're in body and we're in ego. And if we're not using this time wisely to learn and grow spiritually and consciously, then we'll keep coming back until we do. So so one of the things that we can do here in this life in body is to do our best to put ego to the side and use our time to be of service to others. It's not just helping others who have suffered loss, but it's being of service during the pandemic, being of service to the homeless, to those who are food deprived. There's lots of ways to be of service and to form these deep connections with people, because that's fundamentally what helping others is all about. It's creating and opening the door to these deep connections and helping people learn how they can do the same with their friends, their family, their colleagues at work.
Because you pass it forward.
You absolutely passing it forward. And so, and what I found, as others have, as you have, that there is no greater joy than when you can help others achieve an obstacle and get over an obstacle, and when you can watch their rebirth from someone who has been knocked flat on their back with a horrific loss or any loss, and to watch them get up and reemerge as this new person, that, like the Leslies, that are just helping so many other people and telling their story. And the Leslies are compassionate listeners for helping parents heal. I know you've interviewed Elizabeth Boisson.
Just for people to know, there are quite a few interviews about helping parents heal on the podcast, everyone. And it's this amazing, inspiring organization that helps parents who have lost children.
Yeah. And so to witness that, it's like for me, it's like watching my grandchildren when they're born. And we just were blessed with the birth of our first granddaughter 5 days ago, and looking at her face, looking at her innocent face, that's pure joy. And I see that same joy in others, in parents who have achieved that level of progression in their healing. When they are now able to help others, I see the light and the joy in their faces.
It really, and I'm experiencing it, and so are you. It makes
Mhm.
a tremendous difference, and you get to shine
Yeah,
from the depths of your being in spite of the pain that you've suffered.
yeah.
Jimmy, tell us all the ways everyone can connect with you. They all want to get on. They want to get your book. They want to get on your podcast. They want to get on. They want to get on your website. And if you have a special offer for the members of our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience, bravo also. Let it.
Okay. All right. So so first of all, our website, writesomethingbeautiful.com. Remember Eric and what Jimmy told Eric, and you'll remember that. That's an easy way to, to remember the website. We also have sufferingisttheonlyhonestwork.com, and that will provide you a link to our first book and what that's about. We have CaseyGaunt.com.
Now you have to spell that.
CaseyGaunt, 2 T's.com. And that will provide you a link to our new book, When the Veil Comes Down. And then you have to go to Hillary's website, my wife, who is a phenomenal cook. And she has a food blog called HeronEarth.com. Now, Heron is spelled like the bird heron. It's HERON, Earth, EARTH.com. And if you need a fantastic recipe, go to that website. I mean, she is, it'll blow your socks off. And she posts weekly, so there's never any old recipes. There's always something fresh and new. So,
oh, wow. Do we have podcast audience members who are going to want to access that? I am sure.
And you can also, if you want to contact me, you can contact me through writesomethingbeautiful.com, or my email address is Casey Gauntt, Casey, CASCY, period, GAUNTT, letter 1, or pardon me, number 1, at gmail.com. And for your patience and spending the time that you have listening to our story, I want to offer to you access to get for free the Kindle version of When the Veil Comes Down. And when you hear this podcast, that opportunity will be available for 5 days.
That's fabulous. And I cannot tell you all how great a book it is. I mean, you would really enjoy reading this book and learn so much from it. Casey Gauntt, what is your tip for finding joy in life?
Be open to all of the help that is coming your way from not only people that are on the other side that have already transitioned, but all the people here. Be open to it, accept it, acknowledge it, and all of the beautiful things and amazing things that you experience. Share it with others. Brighten their day. Let them know that this is real, and embolden them to share their stories, because so many of them are hesitant to do that. They feel, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy, or I'm making it up. Open the conversation. And as I said, if you can begin to really help others, not only here, but help others on the other side. If there was a relationship that you felt was broken when your loved one transitioned, or it could be stronger, you can still help them. You can strengthen that relationship. You can rebuild that relationship. And as my dad confirmed, by helping them over there, you're helping them proceed with their journey and their spiritual evolution. And if we all are doing that. Just think how close we become on this side of the veil and the other side of the veil until there is no veil.
That's right. Well, I always say, Casey, I'm sure you'll agree with me, that wounded people wound other people. If we can all heal, then we can, there's so much that we can kind of fix in our interactions with others on this planet. Casey, the primary message in your book, When the Veil Comes Down, bears repeating. There is coming a time when there will be no veil. There will be no separation between us on this side of the veil and our loved ones on the other side. When the veil comes down, that is where heaven will be. And that time is closer than we think. The key to unlock that door is helping others with their healing. You, your book, and Grief and Rebirth podcast are truly in sync.
Mm.
I have no doubt that many in our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience are now inspired to read your compelling and healing book, When the Veil Comes Down, and begin their own healing journeys in earnest. Casey, thank you from my heart for this very special and very enlightening interview. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued, many blessings, and bye for now.